surging with the unveiling, stocks soaring to new highs as Republicans finalize a bill to make taxes lower. But someone here says it's something else already being cut that has our market and our economy full of cheer as we head into the new year. So what is it? Hi, everybody. I'm Dagan McDowell. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Emily Jashinsky and Jessica Tarlov. Welcome to everybody. Gary B., so what's already on the chopping block that's boosting this economy and stocks?
All that government red tape, Dagan, that we struggle to get through every single day. Let me give you a couple numbers that are going to amaze and astound you. Government regulations cost this economy $1.9 trillion a year. Put it in perspective, that's about 50% of the tax revenue that the government takes in. That's 10% of our GDP. You know what Donald Trump has done? He's cut those regulations by 32%. He's a bigger cutter of regulations than Ronald Reagan was. If he goes down for one thing in his legacy, it's cutting all this government red tape. It's going to make the economy stronger. It may even be bigger than any tax cut we could all get.
Well, John, I know one thing, that the Dow, just among the market gauges, is up about 25% this year. And stocks were surging even before a tax bill was even really being talked about in Washington. And why is it? It's cutting all that red tape.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, you had the Morgan Stanley Plan Index has the highest business spending that we've had since 2007, according to the latest survey. And that's because businesses are feeling more comfortable. Look, Gary B. has some great numbers, as he always does. But you also look at regulation, which, by the way, has not been dealt with since the 1996 Small Business Fairness Act by President Clinton, which really helped boost the economy, along with the internet boom. But that was a big part of it. We've had 20-something years of regulations stacked on top of each other since 1996. Look at the tax code. It cost Americans $409 billion to comply with this complexity. 1984, you had 23,800 pages. You have triple that right now. It's the same for regulations. We are burdening American businesses with all of this excessive regulations.
Well, Emily, what is it? Is it the tax cuts that are coming or the regulation cuts that are already here?
Well, I think the regulation cuts are completely underappreciated. I mean, a recent Business Roundtable survey of chief executives found that for the first time in 6 years, regulatory cost pressures, they did not list those as their top cost pressures. That is huge. That is absolutely, impossible to overstate the importance of. It's a massive thing that's happening. Even Republican administrations in the past that we've seen have not dealt with regulatory reform. So simply not adding regulations is a huge step for an administration to take. And I think it's something we're glad that the Trump administration, that we're all going to be glad the Trump administration tackled, because it's not an easy thing to do. Listen, I'm in Washington. I'm telling you, nobody here wants to see regulations gone.
Jessica, President Trump was talking about for every one new regulation, it's
two are going to go.
No, it's 22 for everyone. That's what he was talking about this past week.
Yeah, I mean, listen, these are two bad choices for the Democrat and me. So I like higher taxes and I like a lot of regulation. But I think I like higher taxes more than I like regulation. So I'm going to go with regulation as well. No, I think also we were just incredibly optimistic as a nation coming into the businessman presidency. That was something that a lot of people bought, whether you were a supporter of President Trump or not. I think we did have too many regulations, just looking into the reaction from small business owners, which has been so positive to the red tape cutting. I think that that's what has been responsible for this, especially when you look at the fact that there's such negative approval of the tax bill as it sounds. I know that we're going to find in the next few days actually what's in the thing, but as it stands, America is not a fan.
Jonas, what is it? Is it cutting regulations or the tax bill? Because quite frankly, on businesses that create jobs and give us raises, they're both huge burdens.
Yeah, but let's weigh them properly. It's the tax bill. First of all, okay, look, there's no question cutting regulations helps corporate earnings. It might not help the air, but it definitely helps. It helps the stock market. It helps earnings. These are big cuts we're doing. Regulations is great, but corporations earn hundreds of billions of dollars a year. If you cut the president's own, I think the White House's own words is they cut $8.1 billion in regulations lifetime to these companies. That's a 2% corporate tax cut in 1 year. You can't compare the magnitude of a corporate tax cut to the stock market with the multiplier of earnings as you can to changing some environmental regulations and various other. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to get more cuts in regulations that have more of an impact, but it's never going to match this corporate tax cut. Not a chance.
But Gary B., back to your original point, it is astonishing at the burden of regulation that came out of the Obama administration over 8 years. What they re-regulated a sixth of the economy through Obamacare. There was Dodd-Frank, which was a stranglehold on financial companies. They regulated the internet. They nationalized student loans. They tried to put the coal business out of business. I mean, it's astonishing at how vast the kind of regulation drive was during the Obama administration.
Well, you're right, Dagan. I mean, he was just really the exclamation point on it all. It all started back in the Jimmy Carter days. But apart from the numbers that we discussed, John alluded to, anecdotally, I'm sitting here, I'm dumbfounded when Jessica says, and people like Jessica, I want more taxes.
How did I know
and more
you were going to say something about what I said?
Thank you. I would question anyone in Jessica's chair to say, oh, it was so easy to do business with X government agency. Is it easy to do business with the Social Security Administration? Is it easy to do business with the Department of Defense? Across the board, even on your local level.
Gary,
is it
in defense of what I was saying about regulation,
into the DMV and say, "Oh, that was a pleasant experience." There is no government agency out there that's easy or efficient. That's why we need to cut these regulations.
We have a bureaucracy problem for sure, but I wasn't just talking about regulations that affect the business community. We're also, as Jonas brought up, you're talking about things with the EPA. You're talking about food regulations. You're talking about things that President Trump takes a sledgehammer to that he doesn't necessarily even know what he's doing. I mean, he has people at the head of these bureaus who have no interest in them existing.
But how do we manage to exist as a society before those regulations increased exponentially from Jimmy Carter through Obama? How do we manage
Jonas
to
is going to tell us.
Great government
Let me help your
oversight?
case. Because, Dagan, you sort of made the point I'm making in a strange way. Look how much the stock market's up since these regulations went up. Since Obama, these areas that are highly regulated.
Or despite these regulations.
And that may be, but here's my point. Financial stocks, hot as can be with all these regulations still in place largely, doubled since they almost went bankrupt before the regulations. My point is, if Obama raised the corporate tax rate, that's what we're comparing to, instead of doing any of those regulations, I guarantee you the stock market wouldn't have been up as high as it has gone, even with all those Obama regulations. You might say, oh, the market could have gone up 4 times, not to whatever it did, 100%. But I'm telling you, the multiplier with the corporate tax rate with earnings is higher than all the Obama regulations and all the one Trump's going to take away combined.
Well, John, but President Obama did raise taxes. There were taxes embedded in the Obamacare bill. Taxes went up on wealthier Americans. So you're getting this 1-2 punch that is going to basically knock this economy into overdrive.
About the stock market and the earnings multiple.
Yeah,
and
Apple
stock.
Go ahead, John.
President Obama, when he first came in, had $2.1 trillion in revenue coming in. He had $3.2 trillion when he left office. I mean, taxes had gone up about 50%. They needed to go up some, but that amount right there is in excess of 19% of GDP, which is what the market can handle. But to Jessica's point about people not knowing what they're doing, Dodd-Frank wrote the Dodd-Frank bill. Those guys were in charge during the financial crisis. They didn't see it coming, and they're the ones writing regulations for themselves not seeing it coming. That's the problem with regulations. Guys who don't know what they're doing. All they did was suppress bank earnings, and they dealt with nothing that had to do with the 2008 crisis. That's the kind of regulations that we're seeing, and it did suppress bank earnings. Stuff like that needs a sledgehammer taken to it.
Thank you, guys and gals. Cavuto on Business about 20 minutes from now. Neil, what have you got?
Hey, Dagan, tax cuts by Christmas, bigger paychecks by February. That is President Trump's prediction. But will it become a New Year reality? Plus, stopping some terrorists by changing our immigration process. The White House says that a merit-based system would do it. We are all over it. See you soon.
Thank you, Neil. We can't wait. But up here first, we just told you how tax cuts and deregulation can build up our economy. But someone here says those anti-Trump texts in the Russia investigation could be a real downer for the economy. They'll explain next.
Live from America's News headquarters in Washington. Good Saturday morning to you. I'm Leland Vittert. There was some last-minute drama, but now congressional Republicans appear to have enough support to pass their tax reform plan. Senators Marco Rubio and Bob Corker now saying they'll vote yes, putting President Trump on the verge of his first major legislative victory. Lawmakers expect to vote on their bill next week. High winds, dry weather, fanning the flames of the Thomas wildfire in Southern California. No end is in sight. The wildfire has claimed the life of a first responder and torched some 700 homes. Emergency officials say it's about 35% contained as it continues to burn northwest of Los Angeles, making it now the state's fourth largest fire in history. I'm Leland Vittert. More news as it breaks. Now we return you to Bulls and Bears.
It is very sad when you look at those documents, and how they've done that is really, really disgraceful. And you have a lot of very angry people that are seeing it.
If you have those Walmart shopping Trump voters that Peter Strzok so derided in his text messages, how do they react to that? Do they have confidence in their FBI and their Department of Justice?
They're going to ask me what in the hell is going on with the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Some Americans may be losing confidence in the Department of Justice and FBI as newly revealed anti-Trump texts from members of Robert Mueller's special counsel team show a bias for Hillary Clinton and against President Trump and his supporters. Emily, if Americans lose confidence in our justice system, not good, right?
Probably the most important thing of the outcome of the special counsel investigation is public confidence. Because if the public does not have confidence in the decision, whatever the ultimate decision Robert Mueller makes is, it's going to be, there's going to be a problem because people won't accept the results of it, which could create a massive headache. And yes, that could eventually translate to even further lack of confidence across the board. Our institutions right now are suffering from a declining lack of confidence. It's a huge problem, and Robert Mueller knows it because that's why he fired, of course, the man who was responsible for these text messages, kind of did it quietly. We didn't find out about it until now because he doesn't want the public to lose confidence in the investigation. It's key. That is probably the most important part of this investigation.
That individual was reassigned, by the way. But John, what does this country stand on if we don't believe that the laws of the land are being enforced? I point to Lady Justice, the statue. She wears a blindfold. She's supposed to be impartial.
What our country stands on is completely different from what our government stands on. Look, you have a 13% approval rating of our Congress, the people who believe in our Congress as of November 30th by Rasmussen polls. Now, put that in perspective. 20% of America believe in alien abductions, a 50% larger group. So that's within the factor of crazy. And why wouldn't it be? Look at what has gone on in our country the past 70 years. McCarthyism in the 50s, the Vietnam War and J. Edgar Hoover in the 60s. A president resigns in the 70s. Iran-Contra in the 80s. A president is impeached in the 90s. Pick your scandal in the 2000s. The government has lost the confidence of the people because the government is not worthy of that confidence right now. There's some good people there, but too many self-serving politicians have found themselves in power, and that's why confidence has eroded, because Americans are smart and they see what our government's doing.
But Gary B., from the anti-Trump plotting that we found out about with the man working on the Hillary Clinton investigation, and then for Bob Mueller's special counsel, when his mistress and him were texting back and forth, whether it's an official at the Justice Department whose wife actually worked on putting together that discredited Trump dossier paid for by the Democrats. We've got to get to the bottom of this, or nobody will ever trust anybody in law enforcement ever again.
Well, here's the problem, though, Dagan, and it kind of dovetails with what we were talking about last week when I said we should move on from the Hillary thing, and it dovetails with our earlier segment talking about cutting regulations. The trust in government is gone. It's done. John said like 13%. I think overall that it's about 18% in government in total. It hasn't always been this way. Back in the days of JFK, now maybe that was Camelot and everything, but people believed it was like 60, 70%. People trust the government. Now 18%. That's why we need a smaller government that does less. I agree with the things that you brought up. These things should be investigated. On the other hand, no one trusts the government to get it right. So let's just shrink government and move on from a lot of these things.
Jonas?
Maybe the internet just giving us more insight to people's biases than we maybe need. You know, your Justice's blind point. Like the point isn't that justice isn't supposed to.
I didn't say she was blind. I said she had a blindfold on.
Well, she's supposed to have. I think the expression is. The point is, she's allowed to have an opinion. She might not like George Washington as a president. The point is, if he's in trouble, are you being objective?
Jess, what Juan Williams said to me, he was like, "You have opinions. I don't doubt your integrity, but you know what? I can't send people to jail. I can't can't lock them up. That's why it's more important that these individuals who are working in the Justice Department, working in the FBI, basically aren't as biased as they are.
Well, the Hatch Act is very clear about this, that we are supposed to be able to have our political opinions, even if you are working in the Federal Bureau of Investigations. What you can't do is you can't act upon it, and that's why Peter Strzok was fired, because he was sitting around with Andy McCabe.
He wasn't fired. He was still with the FBI.
That doesn't matter. He's not doing anything. And I think Jonas's point is really sound here. We don't have the text messages of the FBI agents that looked into Benghazi. We don't have the ones who were looking into Hillary for all the iterations of the investigations here. Donald Trump is undermining the DOJ every single day. He is promoting a message that is damaging to America and will erode confidence in every single institution, and he doesn't care because he knows he's going down
Emily,
anyway.
final word to you.
Some of the questions directed to the FBI have been warranted, and I think it's very fair on both ends. There's a middle ground here, right? We can be critical of the FBI, and at the same time, we can have, we can ask the right questions of this investigation and have confidence in the final decision.
Increasingly, it looks like the real collusion was against the Trump campaign within the FBI and within the Justice Department. And by the way, that Walmart that Strzok went to was in Southern Virginia, so bless your heart. Thanks, guys and gals. Cashing in just over an hour from now. Liz Clayman, what do you guys have coming up?
Hi, Dagan. Will the final tax cut bill really only help just the wealthy, like Democrats and even some conservatives say, or will it help all Americans like President Trump says? We debate, you decide. Plus, a new report shows nearly 5 million Americans are in default on their student loans. Is this the next bailout the taxpayers should be worried about? I'll see you at 11:30 Eastern.
Thanks, Liz. We'll be watching, but up here first. Some folks right here warned that the Iran nuclear deal was a bad deal for America and our allies. And now our ambassador to the UN may have just proved them right. We play the tape. You decide.
The Iranian regime's behavior is growing worse. The nuclear deal has done nothing to moderate the regime's conduct in other areas. When you look at this missile, this is terrifying. This is absolutely terrifying. And this is why it has to stop.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, standing with a recovered missile launched at Saudi Arabia's capital. She says it's Iranian-made, an undeniable proof that Iran is violating the nuclear agreement. Gary B., you've been saying all along the Iran deal was a bad one. What do you say now?
Well, it's simple, and we shouldn't be surprised. Look, Dagan, with the history of the world, we have had so many bullies. Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, North Korea, Iran, Iraq. What have we learned time and time again? You can't reason with bullies. We keep trying to, and it doesn't work out. The only thing you can do is punch them in the nose and move on. That's what we should do with Iran.
John?
Look, I agree. Gary B., if I had said this since the very beginning and since John Kerry first started impersonating Neville Chamberlain, this is a terrible deal. We had 4 aces, they had a pair of deuces, and we gave them everything that they wanted. Look, the toothpaste is out of the tube right now. We have a signed deal. It's going to be almost impossible to put sanctions back on.
Yeah, peace for our time, Jess, not so much.
Be interested to hear what other people who were in favor of the deal have to say about it. We know Rex Tillerson has said that Iran is cooperating. I'll be interested to hear what he says. People like David Petraeus have backed it, former secretaries of state. So wait and see. But I'm a fan of Nikki Haley. So
there you go. Emily.
Well, I think Nikki Haley made a very good case this week. She put the evidence out in front of everybody, and as time goes on, we're seeing that the deal has not proven to be as wise as some people were telling us it would be at the time. Nikki Haley made a strong case this week. Definitely something to pay attention to.
Jonas, final word.
Okay. First, I don't know how them having a non-nuclear missile has anything to do with the nuclear deal, but I don't even want to get into the complexity of that. The bottom line, you can have the best deal possible with Iran. Let's say they have to pay us to make the place looked over with their oil revenues. That would be the best deal ever, right? And then they can cheat on that deal. It doesn't mean it was a bad deal. It just means they cheated. Now we should punish them. So let's separate the quality of the deal and then being bad and not pay attention to the deal after we did it.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Emily and Jessica, for joining us. Coming up, one of our Santa's little helpers says the best way to put some green in your stocking and wallet is to stay away from one of the most popular gifts of all. We'll explain next. Predictions, Gary B, go.
Dagan, if you have family, Christmas means one thing: schlepping to the airport to pick them up. Delta up 30% in a year.
John, prediction.
Self-driving cars, artificial intelligence benefits, Intel chips. I own the stock. I think it's up 20% in a year.
And Jonas, prediction.
The cryptocurrency bubble was bad for the gold bubble. Inverse gold DZZ up 30% in a year.
John, make sense of that, please.
I'm going to buy Jonas a self-driving scooter for Christmas.
And a helmet and some insurance.
Yes,
I live
and a
on the
helmet.
edge. I don't need it.
Neil,
With the
now.
windmill on top.
If Congress sends me a bill before Christmas, the IRS, this is just out, this is breaking news, has just confirmed that Americans will see lower taxes and bigger paychecks beginning in February, just 2 short months from now.
Say it again, Mr. President. Say it again. A Christmas miracle turning into a New Year bonus. It could happen. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you. I'm Neil Cavuto. The president very confident the tax reform bill will land on his desk by Christmas, and that will give Americans bigger paychecks maybe as soon as February. So can it really happen that fast? To Charles Payne. We got Charlie Gasparino. Lawrence Simonetti is with us, along with Ben Stein and Adam Lashinsky. Kennedy is off this week when she heard that Gasparino was here. That's not true at all. That's not true at all.
I was on with her last
See,
week.
exactly.
She didn't want to come back.
See through the long straw, that's all.
All right, so Lauren, what do you think of that? He is saying, and I was surprised that the IRS has to do these timetables and everything else, but yes, it's doable. February, the net changes can already be in there.
And the IRS has said that early February. It could be possible. It's Taxmas time. I know it's very unpopular right now when we talk about this tax cut that could happen. It could be our Christmas gift. But I think we're also experiencing a sea change, something that we haven't seen before.
Right.
Look at the latest numbers from just this week. Retail sales, on an annual basis, they're up almost 6%, so consumers are confident without seeing a tax cut. Small businesses, we're looking at the second highest number in almost
So that could keep the wind
50
going at the
years.
back, right?
So we are seeing improvements without that tax reform. So should we get it? We could see benefits by February. I'm saying yes.
Charles Payne, what do you think?
See?
I agree. I think the virtuous cycle has already begun. And listen, I don't know if we're going to get it in February. I hope we do. I hope for
The
the sake of
president
people
just
watching.
said, he said that.
Yeah.
So you're not denying that.
Well, no, but, he's also going off a report, too, so we'll both use that report in case
I
it
got
doesn't
you.
happen. But the bottom line
That's
is...
like saying the IRS would target groups and all. I mean, of course,
never,
yeah.
of course,
Right.
be used
Right.
as a weapon.
Yeah, sure.
But I agree 100% with Lauren. I think the wheels of the economy are moving. People are feeling better. Retail sales are up. Confidence is up. And in part because people anticipate getting more in their paycheck, or at least keeping more in their paycheck.
Caswell?
I think what the president left out is that some people are going to get a massive tax increase, and I think that's going to be a problem for the economy. I mean, let's be real clear here.
You're talking about those who live in the high-tax states like
Yes.
you who cannot
Let's
let go of this.
Let's be real clear here, Neil. Poor people and working class people don't pay a lot of federal income tax. They pay
Just
payroll
as a quick
tax.
side note, they do watch the show.
I know, but I just want to remind them, if they think they're going to get rich, if Donald Trump is going to be handing them gazillion dollars from his, from Trump Tower, dropping
We
little
don't know.
bags,
We'll have to see it sorted
it's going to
out.
be very marginal for them.
Okay.
And then middle class people in high tax states are going to be hosed.
All right, Adam, what do you think of that? You're in a pretty pricey neck of the woods.
Indeed. Charlie's exactly right. And by the way, what happens with people's paychecks won't necessarily be the final say. What's more important for the people Charlie's talking about is when they file their tax returns next year, they may or may not be seeing a tax decrease. They probably won't.
Actually, they'd be
no matter
filing their
if they-
returns the year after next. So the delayed effect will be there, right? I'm wondering if it's too late to
It's a
help,
little-
even if it's good, to help Republicans, let's say, just thinking politically in the midterms. Left a speech, didn't I? Yeah.
No. There's no doubt that if your paycheck is higher, you're going to feel better about that. You might spend a little more money. Things are definitely moving in the right direction. They have been for about 8 years, by the way.
Ooh, okay. So Ben Stein, what do you make of this and what people do? I mean, it's obviously what you see, what you net in your check, and obviously the benefits of a corporate tax cut that you've espoused for some time. Then what?
Well, I think people are going to see the benefits of the corporate tax cut immediately and are already seeing it in the skyrocketing stock market. And that benefits everyone, even people who don't own stock directly. It benefits them through their IRAs, through their pension plans, through their children's university endowments. That's all going to be a big benefit. What I keep noticing is nobody pays any attention to the deficit. Nobody pays any attention to it at all. It's as if we had just wished it out of existence. It's not going to go away, and eventually, I won't live to see it, but my granddaughter, who's a beautiful, wonderful little girl, is going to live to see this country go through bankruptcy, and I'm scared to death about it.
Hopefully, Ben, if we get 3% growth, 3.5% growth, it will go away, because that's those.
By the way, this is Ben's granddaughter. I don't think she needs worry. If
you're talking about his grand, I thought he said his daughter.
France has got the GDP of much of Latin America.
But think about it. 3.5% GDP growth helps pay down the deficit.
That's a big jump. Charlie, that's a big jump.
Lately we've been,
hell of a big jump.
I know, but lately we've been at around 3.
This will be the third consecutive quarter, 3% growth. In fact, 3.3% according to
we all love the IRS. Let's just say this, as a man who's been being audited now for about the last year, we all love the IRS.
I agree.
They're the nicest, kindest people in the world. They're sweet, lovely, wonderful people.
I agree.
God bless them.
I agree. I've been saying that for years.
Sure. Lauren, I mean, that's the issue, right? You got to start seeing a bang for the buck. But as you point out, we're already seeing a lot here. And so it's going to be a hard act to top, right?
And it's not always a good thing. We're talking about the national deficit, but there's also the personal deficit. We're not saving a lot of money right now.
Yeah.
We are spending it, and we could be getting ourselves, it's good for the economy. I know 2/3 of economic activity is consumer spending, but
Lashinsky's saving. He's one of the cheapest people I know. He is saving every single penny. So when the world does end, Adam's going to be there and say, right over here, sucker.
He's reinvesting his Apple dividends.
I'm a good saver, and I'm also the only person probably on the program who enjoys paying my taxes. It just makes me feel good. I just wanted to say.
He does, actually. He does. In fact, you're one of those who gives extra, right? You always say they have a line, if you want to give extra, you fill that out, right? Yeah.
No, I do not. But Ben said no one's talking about the deficit. The Republicans talked about the deficit, and they decided that they didn't care. They decided Charlie was right. Oh, we're going to grow our way out of it.
Just like the Democrats before, right? Both parties have failed on this, right?
The Democrats are the worst.
Have declined to rein in spending, yes.
Well, very much so. No, they're never going to rein in spending. We could be on this show for 1,000 years, God bless us all, and they're never going to rein in spending. It's just not going to happen.
Well, they have a tough time even curtailing the growth in spending.
Absolutely right.
Our dead hypocrisy aside, though, there is a big difference between treading water, Adam, which we did for 8 years, and the type of acceleration and the type of enthusiasm that we're seeing in our economy, in our stock market, and on Main Street. You must admit that. You can, the evidence is there, and I think that's infectious. We know, that's why I said a virtuous cycle. It couldn't be done with Fed money printing, but it can be done the way it's being done right now, and it is infectious, and it doesn't go away overnight.
The only thing I would say to that is that, let's be real clear here. The Obama economy flirted with 3%.
Why, we're not being clear before?
No, you're not, because here's why. The Obama economy, as much as I dislike his economic policies and not crazy about him as an economy, flirted with 3% growth a few times, and it fell back. And one thing I will tell you, with stock buybacks, with cutting the corporate tax rate, that's going to stimulate a lot of stock buybacks. It may be good for the markets. That has less
stock buybacks are down this year, and the market is up this year.
Well, that's for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, that's right.
But let me tell you something. Don't think
including a thing called earnings. And by the way, top line growth is rocking.
No, we're talking about different. How are we going to put people to work and increase their wages? You do that by investing in plant and equipment.
And they're starting to do that.
We do that also with deregulation. The president's goal, the White House goal for next year is for every new regulation, they're going to pull back 3. So that's better than they promised.
By the way, who tracks that? I heard that too. Like we're going to take 1, then going to say 3.
There is an office that.
Let me see you doing it.
Okay, so I can tell you. So far in 2017,
I don't believe it. It's like me saying I'm going to have a salad every day to prove it.
We have had 3 new regulations.
Yeah, come on.
3 new regulations and 67 have been pulled back.
So where are all the factories?
That's a 22 to 1
why are all these factories opening up in upstate New York?
On Friday.
Where's all the manufacturing?
Look at the data, though. It's there. Empire State Fed report. Look at that. that. It came out Friday. Look at the industrial production numbers. Look at capacity utilization numbers.
They're fabulous.
They are
absolutely
fire.
fabulous.
They're moving in the right direction.
They're moving in the right
direction. You don't go from 1 to 100 overnight.
Right.
They are moving.
I know that, but here's the bottom line.
They're zooming.
Okay, so manufacturing is back to where it was in the 70s.
No, of course not.
All right.
Don't get back to the 70s.
That's right.
May I remind you, gentlemen, it's the holidays.
All I'm saying is that it's moving in a way that it hasn't moved in years, and that's something we should applaud.
We have never had an argument like this, and it's on top-line growth, whatever that is.
Hasn't it been
Sure.
Maybe I'm missing the numbers here. Another thing I'm missing. Wasn't it kind of improving under Obama lately?
Yes, it was.
Yes,
absolutely.
there you go.
So why is it Trump's?
No.
Yeah.
Each can take a bow, I guess, right? All right. In the meantime, terror attacks in New York City in less than 2 months, and they both may have been avoided by having one immigration system based on nothing more than merit. So says the president. So says the president wants to do something about it now, after this.
Today on Forbes on Fox, calls for Robert Mueller to disband his special counsel after reports of agents talking about trying to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. Well, now someone here says we should just ban all taxpayer-funded special counsels for good. Plus, a new study showing major bias from major news networks. This could be the one that proves it beyond a reasonable doubt. We'll see you soon.
Live from America's News headquarters in Washington. Good Saturday morning. I'm Leland Vittert. President Trump calling Cindy McCain, the wife of the Arizona senator, checking in on his status. Senator McCain is at Walter Reed Medical Center dealing with side effects from his cancer treatment. The Republican senator was diagnosed earlier with an aggressive form of brain cancer. A tribute to our nation's fallen heroes. Volunteers placing wreaths at every tombstone in Arlington National Cemetery as they honor those who wore the uniform and gave us the freedoms we have today. It's an annual tradition carried out by the groups Wreaths Across America. That tradition goes back 26 years. You can help out online, wreathsacrossamerica.org. Meantime, I'm Leland Vittert. We'll break in when there's more news. Now back to Cavuto on business.
Well, authorities are still investigating what could have been a fatal terror attack in the New York City subway station. The attacker, a 27-year-old man you've heard from Bangladesh, entered through the U.S. through something called chain migration. That is one based largely on family ties, not exclusively. President Trump says this is why he wants more of a merit-based system. Charles, on this one you say the president's right. Explain.
You know, look, I looked at Canada. They changed their immigration system a few years ago to a merit-based system. It includes education, includes that you have a job waiting for you.
In other words, what you can bring to the country.
What you can bring to the country. And there's also a slice in there. You get 10 points for the ability to fit in. If you have relatives here, that helps. It helps a lot. And I think about how fewer incidents there have been vis-a-vis, terrorism and things like that. But also, let's face it, we're a nation built on immigration, but we're also a nation where we populated it. And I think at this point, if we want to stay number one in the world, we need to bring in as much talent as possible, and also people who are going to be pledging allegiance to our country as soon as they step foot on it.
Ben Stein, what do you think of that? The gist of what the president's saying, you come to the United States with the understanding you're going to bring something to the United States.
I love the idea. I personally, I don't understand why we're having any immigration at all at this point, except for agricultural workers. But how are they going to do merit-based immigration? Or are they going to give everybody the immigration college boards? Are they going to give everyone the immigration ACTs? I mean, how are they going to judge merit? It's a very slippery thing to try to grab hold of.
There are systems established around the world, including Canada already, that will be easy to mimic, I think, Ben.
And that might be.
Okay, if you think so, but I look at Canada, and I don't see Canada being the United States of America. I just don't see how it can be done. But if you can explain it to me, I would love to know it.
Just a quick side note, Ben, we also have Canadian viewers. So, Lauren, you hear that. What do you think of what the president wants to do? Because this system has produced some doozies for us.
We have had 2 terror incidents in New York recently. The Halloween terrorist who came here through the diversity visa program, a lottery, basically. Right. And then a few weeks later, we had a terrorist, the subway bomber, come in because he was the nephew of a U.S. citizen. That is chain or family migration. The president wants to do something called the Race Act, where it would be merit-based if you're the parent of someone you cannot come in. So it's basically just for spouses and children. And that makes more sense to me because at a certain point, you got to draw the line. And also, you can't come in because you're a nephew. You're coming in here because you have a job, a skill, and education.
No, you can come in because you're a nephew.
Yeah, that's excessive.
By the way, what makes you
should be proud to come to the
and
U.S.
that's
You shouldn't be
exactly
entitled to come in because you're a nephew.
Exactly what it should be. Neil, this is no more about immigration than Timothy McVeigh or the Unabomber were about being Americans. These crazy people are going to do crazy things. That's true. We have to keep being a nation of immigrants, and family ties are
no
a
one's not
perfectly
saying
good
that,
reason.
Adam, but they're saying, what about smart immigration? Not even about terrorists. How about bringing
for
people
that
to the
too.
country
Great idea.
who are going to add
Great
something
idea.
to it?
But how do you know he did? When he came here 7 years ago, the Bangladeshi assailant, right? As far as I remember, Charlie Gasparino, he was fine. He became radicalized years later. So how do you police that no matter what system you use?
You're right. And here's why I agree with Ben 100% on this. You can see, it's very easy to see how a PhD from Bangladesh might be a terrorist. It happens. They get radicalized over there in colleges. Just because they're smart and they can add something to our system doesn't mean they're not going to come here and blow themselves up. I agree with Ben. We need an immigration system for people that we need to employ. If it's not agriculture, it's got to be almost zero. We don't need manufacturing. We don't need people.
Well, there are a lot of industries. There are a lot of industries that are saying that they can't fill their jobs without.
But how do you weed out?
Wages will go up.
How do you weed out the dangers or those who could become? There's no way to do that.
The only way to weed them out here is to have more aggressive law enforcement. Bill De Blasio doesn't allow the New York City police. Let me make this point. Let me just make this point. Bill De Blasio does not allow police to go inside mosques and
talking about the mayor of New York City. All right. What do you think of that, bud? Adam?
We children, great-grandchildren of immigrants should not sort of change the way America behaves
they
right
only brought us in when they needed us.
Because it's what makes America
My grandparents came here because they needed people to work on roads and bridges and in manufacturing plants. They don't need that anymore.
Because your grandparents needed someplace to go.
They would have went someplace else. They would have went to Argentina. They would have went to Argentina if we didn't have an industrial revolution here in the U.S.
And right now, Charlie be yelling at you in Spanish.
Yeah,
Spanglish.
Wow. What are the odds that there's someone like you in Argentina?
There are
a lot of Italians in Argentina.
You don't know that.
Yelling and screaming.
I have family in Argentina.
Sure. All right. In the meantime, InstaPay or InstaProblems, one U.S. company telling its workers, you don't have to wait until payday to get paid, but someone here says they could pay a big price if they do.